This is Keys to the Shop, special live edition recorded at Coffee Fest Los Angeles 2024, Part 1. Well, hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Keys to the Shop, a special live edition where we go on the show floor at Coffee Fest and we talk to some of the presenters that are giving lectures and doing workshops and trainings at the event. And we cover a lot of different topics. As you know, Coffee Fest does provide a large volume of different educational opportunities at each show. You can find out more about Coffee Fest by going to coffeefest.com. Upcoming shows remaining this year: Minneapolis in October. It's going to be chilly, brisk, awesome. I'm really looking forward to it. Every Coffee Fest has been so great. Sunny, very warm, and having a little bit of a chill in the air is going to be great up there in Minneapolis. So definitely check that one out. But then, of course, 2025 is all but spoken for. You need to go and check them out and see if one of them is coming near you, or you just travel there. It is a 30-year-old trade show that just keeps getting better. The way that they arrange these things is they have the best providers of services and products on the trade show floor. They have free or very accessibly priced trainings and workshops all throughout the days of Coffee Fest for you to learn about everything from human resources to training and coffee and tasting and management and leadership and everywhere in between. And you get to just interact with a large number of similarly minded coffee people at Coffee Fest trade shows. Again, check them out at coffeefest.com and sign up today for this upcoming one in Minneapolis, or check out the cities that are coming up in 2025, coffeefest.com. Okay, everyone. Well, today is part one of a two-part episode where we recorded 4 interviews with people on the show floor at Coffee Fest. And when I mean on the show floor, I mean like folding tables against a wall, sometimes next to hand sinks. We're doing these episodes in the wild, and we're all kind of walking around drinking coffee and talking about coffee at these trade shows. It's wonderful. And you hear the background noise and the hum of conversation and equipment, and maybe even some pets, some dogs, because there was a dog adoption booth there hosted by our friend Jeremy Lyman over at Birch Coffee Dog Guy on Instagram. Go follow him. But anyway, I am excited for this set of interviews because we covered some great topics. In store for you on part one, we have Shanita Nichols, who is the co-founder of Sip and Sonder in Los Angeles. And then following that in today's episode, we have Leo and Elisa, who are the owners and founders of Picaresca Coffee Shop and Roastery in Boyle Heights in Los Angeles. So it's going to be kind of a mini Founder Friday, if you will, between Picaresca and Sip and Sonder. You know, we're going to be covering the foundations of these businesses, the philosophy of leadership and craftsmanship that goes into the coffee and the hospitality. And each one of them, Shanita as well as Leo and Elisa, have a very unique approach to how they do business, why they do business, and what they hope to accomplish through coffee in their communities. And so we're going to start off today by talking with Shanita Nichols, who is a co-founder, along with her friend Amanda Jane Thomas. Sip and Sonder was established back in 2017 in Inglewood, California. Through their sourcing and roasting and cafes and hospitality, they're seeking to redefine the global coffee experience and are leading the next wave of coffee by centering Black experiences and telling the stories of stakeholders at origin through their operations. And today we're going to be exploring a little bit about their story through our conversation with Shanita. We get into some scientific territory as we talk about coffee and we talk about business, because on top of practicing law, Shanita also holds a degree in chemical engineering from Columbia University. And so this is a very interesting conversation that will definitely pique your curiosity as well as inspire you with the success that Sip and Sonder has had over these years since 2017 in the mission that they have through their business. So let's get right to it. Here now is my conversation with the co-founder of Sip and Sonder, Shanita Nichols. Shanita, welcome to this little live edition of Keys to the Shop.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's great to meet you. And I have been watching the progress of your cafe and roastery for quite a while now. And so to see you on the speaker list for Coffee Fest was really cool. It's like, we got to talk to them here. We got to get Sip and Sonder on this show. So welcome. I'm thankful to be here. So
thank you for that.
5 years. We were just mentioning you've been open for 5 years now. You started, like a lot of people, very unknowingly that you were going to immediately go through the pandemic.
Yeah.
Like 2019. So why did you start your coffee shop? And then did you actually question, why did we start this coffee shop when 2020 happened?
That's a fair question. You know, it's funny. I used to say in college that I would retire and own a coffee shop somewhere in the world. It was this like post after everything is said and done with the career. Otherwise, that would be my end goal. But then I, started thinking more. I got more into entrepreneurship. I was a practicing attorney. I was an engineer and then an attorney thereafter, and met up with my now co-founder, Amanda Jane Thomas, and we were practicing together at the same law firm in New York, and started to get, into the questions of what do we want to do with our lives. I think there's a point in many attorneys' lives where it's like, okay, this may not be fully sustainable for our passions and what brings us joy. And so in that conversation, I mentioned wanting my interest in coffee, my love of coffee shops, kind of the environment and ecosystem around that. Amanda Jane talked about her journey through getting into law and wanting to empower people, and her past careers in creative fields and other areas, and wanting to empower people, empower communities, and create space. And so we, really came to the conclusion in that conversation that these things really aren't disparate at all. They can come together in a coffee shop environment and be placed in spaces that we want to impact.
Yes. Okay, so this was like an impact journey for you all. Like, well, this is going to be something, it's not just a coffee shop. It's something that you want to have a ripple effect on a community, to give opportunity, to just like make a difference. What can encapsulate that for us, what the impact is?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's, in part, the idea of what a coffee shop provides to an individual. It's a space that you can go to. You can, dream up ideas by yourself. You can meet with people. It's a space for information exchange. And for both of us, what we identified in our own lives was that those spaces weren't available in the communities that we come from, Black and Brown communities. A shift has continued to happen where we see that changing, but certainly in our experiences, having gone, Amanda was at Harvard, I was at Columbia, being in these spaces of privilege and really deeply identifying the benefits of having this third space of information exchange, of feeling a level of ownership, to provide that and have that without having to leave your own community became obviously paramount to the success of individuals that looked and reflected who we are.
So then when you first started it, you're going to take cues from the established industry that says, well, here's how to lay out a coffee bar, here's how to start a coffee bar. You had saturated yourself in the community of coffee shops and what that felt like. So you're trying to put together a vibe of, this is what I'm familiar with, this is what I like in coffee shops, but then you're also serving the community. So how did it come together where it was you all, right? But it was also for the community specifically. So it's kind of like a balance between the two. How did that come together? When
I get questions about the beginning of the shop, I think back and, we opened our doors before we could serve coffee. One, because the idea of just having a space to go to that's not your home or that's not work was, an initial entry point for us within the community. And so we had drywall that was just kind of laying around, and we thought, okay, we should go ahead and start having events. We don't have the permits to serve coffee yet, but we can use this space. And by doing that and by being both vulnerable in opening the doors in that space and having the community come in. It led to a level of ownership that the community still continues to, like, you can feel it in the space. Like, there's a protected nature within the space from the community that we sit within. And we got to, like, develop and hear from people on, I could really see this being a really great poetry night. I can see this being used for voting registration. I can see, envisioning with us what that space could become. And so a lot of the events and programming, we do a lot of events and programming out of this space in addition to our coffee bar operations, continue to be impacted by the conversation that we have with the community, the ownership that they have in this space as well.
Yeah. And I like the idea that this is a platform on which people can kind of function in the need that they know they have. Like the canvas that people paint on, right? That's your coffee shop. And you opened it up to that. A lot of operators have a very clear vision. They've got a business plan. They say, no, it has to be exactly this way. But by opening it up to the community, you allow it to shape itself because that was your reason for doing it. To begin with, right? So the roots of this wasn't even transactional about selling coffee. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
But then eventually you had to sell coffee.
Certainly.
Right? So now
and
people...
we love selling coffee.
I mean, you had to make a decision too, like, here's the style of coffee we're going to do. We're just going to serve things that we're familiar with, but also make it us.
Yeah.
Right? So talk a little bit about how that first year went, where you were establishing sort of the brand.
Yeah. I think that, starting with a traditional coffee menu was certainly, we wanted to get our understanding, I think, especially as we opened up the roastery and we're making our own profiles on coffee, what regions are we representing? What's the global representation that we can have that creates a circular flow back into the community, understanding that the community is, that we decided within Inglewood, predominantly Black and Brown community, understanding that coffee comes from predominantly Black and Brown and Indigenous communities around the world. What is the connection we're able to make when we stand behind the register and take someone's order who may or may not have been familiar with, the world of coffee, and making the connect that this is a representation of lineage that gets, presented back to both the customer, and then we get to, when we travel to origin, back to origin. And so that became really clear to us very early on of what it looked like to, certainly every coffee shop is selling coffee and they're coming from these same regions, but what does it look like to storytell on top of that and show representation that is cyclical? And that gets reflected, certainly in our traditional kind of coffee drinks, the cappuccinos, cortados, lattes, and also as we look at what kind of specialty items, specialty drinks are we bringing in, what spices are we using, how is that telling the story of the origin of the coffee, how is that telling the story of the origin of the community that comes into our space as well.
So now there's two stories happening here. There's the story of the community in Inglewood. That was where the original shop was, right? And you've got two shops now, right? Or three?
Two, and then our third one's opening October.
Oh, nice. And so then there's the community or the story of the coffee itself, that lost lineage or the reconnection of lineage. We had Bartholomew Jones of Coffee Black on talk about like honoring the roots of coffee. And it adds so many layers to the experience, so it's not just a coffee shop where you just grab a quick cup. Like, it speaks to something a little bit more nourishing in that way, right?
Absolutely.
So then you start roasting shortly after that. And I'm sure that's part of the connection and being part of the story too. So how did it go, like, to go from, I love coffee shops, I'm going to open this coffee shop, and now we're going to start, it's a learning curve to open a coffee shop.
Yeah.
And then to roast coffee is another learning curve. So how did you experience that?
Yeah. My background is in chemical engineering, and so I got to go back to back to the basics a little bit.
Okay. Yeah.
So really, it was really exciting and something that was always part of, again, the plan for that. My introduction into coffee was actually kind of predated or simultaneous with sitting in coffee shops. I studied the chemical components of coffee and looking at potential ways of utilizing that for energy sources. And so it was, there's a lot a lot that comes into.
It's like a full circle moment for you, yeah?
Yeah, it's really beautiful. And so it gets really exciting when we, first jumped in. Certainly still a learning curve on the world of coffee and how to approach it and what systems have been utilized. Going back into, I kind of talk about like the basics of, I can get super nerdy, so I'm going to try to not, but I teach a thermodynamics course in association with our roasting and, what's happening at a molecular level of the coffee as it moves through, the profile creation. And so, when we got back I say back into the lab, but when we got into the lab for coffee in particular, it's so exciting. Like every time we have a new region or a new coffee and we get to, identify what components we want to bring out of the coffee and how we're honing in and our profile creation, really knowing as much as possible at each step what's happening molecularly with the coffee to bring out those profiles. It's just really exciting.
Yeah.
I can nerd out all day about this, but it's really
I love it.
A cool application of this area of study that, is such a big part of my life.
Yeah, so there's this technical lab. You're going back literally to a lab to like examine this coffee. And then there's the lab of your cafe where all of that work to bring about that potential and then execute on like grinding that coffee and serving it. It's like a feedback loop.
Yeah.
And so you get to like tune into like, now this is our blend and we finally have it dialed in because the tasters have voted this is good, right? So now you've got this green, like you're talking about green coffee here at the show. That's one of the things you're giving presentation on and you're having conversations about. So that is the potential of coffee is locked in that seed.
Yeah.
So how have you, over the last 5 years since starting roasting, really developed a sense for what you're looking for in green coffee, and how do you recommend other people develop that sense for themselves as well?
Yeah, it starts in a few different ways, and it's evolved over time, over the 5 years that we've been engaged in this. What has become more important now than when I started was actually going to origin, meeting the producers and the growers and the pickers, and identifying first what's important to them. What are things that they want people to experience with the product, so that we're storytelling certainly within that, but it's not our ideas of what we think, the story is. It's what is the story?
Yeah.
How does it want to be presented? And then, I think within that, the background of the community in those spaces also impact how we are engaging both in the lab with the coffee and at the roast level and at tasting profiles. So I was just in Mexico in Tapachula with Rosalba Cifuentes, who just has an amazing story in coffee, and I just think she's great.
Yeah.
And got to spend time with her. And, we literally were driving around and stopped on the side of the road and picked a fruit from a tree that's not commercialized anywhere, even in the region. And it was like, that's the note that I'm tasting. And I don't even know what the name of this fruit is, but like now I know, that I can start to bring this out of the coffee. And so I would never have had that experience, and there's a privilege to go for sure and have that connection. But now I know to think of like, okay, when I'm roasting and I want to get this unique taste out, I can associate it with something that won't be found on the wheel, but that, I have this experience with, and that, their team themselves understands to be part of the nature of the coffee.
Yeah. So are you pulling out that potential, I imagine, initially with a sample roasting process? Mm-hmm. So you say, I know if I'm doing this enough, I know that their potential is within this window of like flavors that I'm so familiar with. I know we can do something with this. Yeah? How does that work for you?
Yeah, so it's one area that I get to explore that a lot with is natural coffees. So I think it's like really it lends itself to be able to do that exploration and really shift the profile of a coffee depending on how you're roasting it. One coffee I'm thinking of right now is and it's a natural Ethiopia coffee from Sidama, and there's like strawberry components to it, as happens with natural coffees from Ethiopia. And I was like, I really want to, get more of this strawberry. Like I can taste it. We can kind of roast it anyway. Like it's going to come out, but I like really wanted to like hone in on it. And, knowing and understanding that that's there, that we could really bring it out by focusing on that like initial part of the roasting profile, kind of pre-crack, and like charging. So I went up on the charge, I shortened the time, and kind of played around with that like first area, and like how am I gonna allow for, I don't want to use the wrong term, it's not a pre-crack development because that's using terms, but like that time period before.
Understood.
And playing around again with, I guess, two components in that one was the charge temp and then also the batch size. And that's become hugely important over the last few months for me and the roastery, is looking at batch sizes and how that is impacting across, those different variables we look at.
Impacts the thermodynamics of the drum and everything else. I assume you're using like a drum roaster. Yeah.
We're on Alluring, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So it's gonna get. What I know about Loring's is that it's gonna highlight a lot of the higher notes, like I say, high notes, like the florals, the fruitiness, and things like a lot of coffees I taste from Loring's tend to taste that way.
Yeah.
So it's great that you're using it, because it seems like that's something you really value.
Mm-hmm.
So now everybody has got a chance in your communities to really say, this is a place that serves coffee we love. They do things we love. They represent us very well. And now you've got a third shop opening. But this happens with a team of people. And it happens with a lot of paperwork, a lot of administrative load, shifting from I love going to coffee shops to opening a coffee shop. Entrepreneurship is very difficult. To make this happen is no small feat. Mm-hmm. So how is it that you counsel entrepreneurs in the coffee space when you encounter them? What are the top 3 things you find yourself telling them to get ready for?
Yeah.
How to manage their energy and what to focus on?
Yeah. You mentioned a business plan earlier on in the conversation, and I do encourage everyone to write down the plan.
Yeah.
And it does, it just does so many things to write it down. It forces you to think through, the vision of it, to actually see what the execution looks like. It just opens up questions that you wouldn't otherwise even know
right.
that you
don't
know.
You gotta think them through,
you gotta
right?
think it through.
Yeah.
And it also allows you to think as big as possible. I think in black boxes a lot, because that's how I think, and looking at, okay, what's the end goal or an interim end goal that I want to have, and then what are the variables along the way, what's that black box that everything needs to come into, and it's let's shine a light. I think the business plan shines a light into the black box.
What is the black box? What?
Mm-hmm. Bear. So this is my Kimmy.
Okay.
So you have inputs going in to this box.
Yeah.
And you have that, whatever's happening in the box, creating an output. If you're identifying what your output that you want to be, and you have identified the variables that you have at your disposal, now your black box is creating the algorithms of how am I putting these variables together to reach my outcome.
Right, okay.
And then you can identify, am I missing variables? Are there other ways that these can come together? All of those things start to become clearer when you have to write out what your algorithm is. And so I see the black box as writing out your source code for the business to get to that end result.
Very cool. Okay. I learned something there. That's great. Yeah. And it really is about, it's not like you just did it once. You're still doing it.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Everything plays differently with each other, right? It's the people that work together, the coffees that come into play, different, even just the weather, it's all variables entering that black box. And your algorithm's always adjusting.
Absolutely.
Way more than Instagram, right? So
we're having an event at the shop on Wednesday on quantum physics and coffee.
Nice.
And it's, a lot of it is that circular, cyclical, that everything is happening. All those variables are coming together at once, and you're just identifying them at different spaces and experiences, but they impact the whole.
Yeah. I totally get what you're saying. There's a co-creative element to all of this, but it's a tapping into a pre-existing systems that are pre-existing. Coffee shops come up and they go away, they come up and they go away, but they all tend to reflect a certain facet of this unseen reality. Mm-hmm. Let's get too weird about it, but it really is something magical.
Yeah.
It is magical. And it's almost fractal in the sense that it can repeat itself in many different ways, but it looks unique almost, even though it's repeating it's a coffee shop. Oh, it's a coffee shop. But there's different angles that you can see it in, and that's what makes yours unique.
Absolutely.
then when I start a coffee shop, where do I get comfort as an operator to know that I'm doing a good job? Let's just ask you, like, where do you draw the most joy from? Looking over the landscape of your business right now, what brings you the most energy and joy, having created now 3 shops and roasting and a well-loved community space?
There's 2 anecdotal stories that come to mind. The first one is, it was actually during the height of the lockdown of COVID when we were serving over a table at the front of the shop, and a couple came up and they were ordering their coffee and they were saying, our daughter is at home and she's making this, and playing with her toys and pretending to be a barista at Sip and Sonder, or an owner of Sip and Sonder, like a coffee shop. And it was like this moment of one, receiving that this is a space that the community is engaging with in that way. And also that the idea of having ownership of a coffee shop is an operational aspiration. It's an entrepreneurial aspiration. It's a technical aspiration that's all being embodied in this young person now, given their dynamic engagement. And that was just like...
Wow. That's pretty cool.
It was really cool.
And that young person the potential is unlimited.
Yeah.
Because now they're a factor that enters into the black box of the industry.
Exactly.
And they are going to make it better.
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome.
It's really, really cool.
That's a great story. So obviously there's a lot more we could talk about, but I'm happy we got to cover a bunch of really cool things here.
Yeah.
Where can we learn more about Sip and Sonder and how to be in your cafe or just buy your coffee and interact with you there?
Yeah, so our website, www.sipandsonder.com. Our Instagram as well, same name. In both of those platforms, we put up our different things that are happening in the space, information about our coffees. You can purchase our coffees
as
as well. Right. And our calendar of events are there as well.
Shanita, thank you so much. This has been great.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
All right. Okay, everyone. Well, I hope that you enjoyed that conversation with Shanita, and I hope that what you do after this is go to their website, sipandsonder.com, and make sure that you follow them on Instagram, and you can find them on Instagram simply at Sip and Sonder. And so when you stay plugged in, you can, next time you're in Los Angeles, go get their coffee. You can order their coffee online as well as become a wholesale client. And again, that's over at sipandsonder.com. Huge thank you to Shanita for joining me on the show. It was such a pleasure to get to explore the story of Sip and Sonder a little bit at Coffee Fest with you. We really appreciate all that you do through your company. And it was great. So now we're going to go to our second interview of our series, and that's going to be with our good friends Leo and Elisa, who are the founders of Picaresca in Boyle Heights, Los Angeles. Now, Picaresca is a place that I was made aware of because I went to Cafe Calle. Our friend Diana at Cafe Calle had their coffee on her shelf, and I got it, and I was like, man, this is really amazing. I love the artwork and everything else. And eventually I reached out, and I just, through emails and everything else, told them about how it was amazing, and I ordered more coffee. And on top of that, Elisa has been a member of our key holder coaching group for the past 6 months here at Keys to the Shop. And we've gotten to really know the story of Picaresca in a very detailed kind of way. And so I figured, man, it's really time for us to sit down and talk with Leo and Elisa about the story of how they formed this company and the community that they serve in Boyle Heights. The Hispanic community was underserved with specialty coffee, has now this jewel of a coffee shop and roastery in the form of Picaresca, where through the food and coffee and generally the down-to-earth hospitality, it's very familial, very welcoming, very dynamic. I was really pleased to get to visit their shop. And so we got to sit down at Coffee Fest and chat about the evolution of this brand and how they've grown and how they are approaching this next phase where they have expanded from their roastery and cafe that they started in, which is a much smaller footprint, to a larger one, the one that I got to visit in Boyle Heights, how things are going, and really the heart behind their entrepreneurial journey. So really pleased to have gotten to sit down with them. So here now is my conversation with our friends Leo and Elisa over at Arabica Coffee in Boyle Heights, Los Angeles. All right, I'm here with Elisa and Leo, owners of Picaresca here in LA in Boyle Heights. Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having us.
I'm excited.
Thank you for having us, Chris.
This is really a treat because I've gotten to know your brand over the last year pretty well. I loved your coffee when I first discovered it. I've ordered it shipped to my house, and then Lisa, we get to chat often in the Keyholder coaching group, which has been awesome. And then I got to just see your cafe evolve to what it is now. You know, you've got the kitchen, you've got the cafe, you've got the roastery. And I'm just kind of curious, what was the evolution of Picaresca, and what was the goal of starting it in the first place? What year was it, by the way, that this started?
We started in 2021, right in the middle of the pandemic.
Yeah.
I've been in the industry for a long time already. It was just something that I wanted to do, have my own shop, have my own coffee place. And yeah, we found this small coffee shop that was already ready to go, and we decided to approach it. It had everything that we wanted. It was in our community, which is Boyle Heights, and it was ready to go, so it wasn't as risky as starting something from scratch.
Right, so there was a bar in there already. It had been a coffee shop, so you just needed to make it yours.
Yeah.
Right?
It was a juice bar, so
coffee is bean juice, right?
Yes, exactly. And it had the premise that we needed to sell coffee already, so that was okay. From previous conversations that I had with friends that had already opened coffee shops, they always said just try to get something that is ready to go and don't deal with the city. So
yeah.
that was my take. That was my approach, and we found it, and it worked.
Very smart. Okay.
Yeah, found this location that was perfect for us at the time. Not a lot of visibility, though, so that was challenging.
Interesting. Okay.
And it was a very unlikely place to have a shop, but we made it work. I think that aspect of it, we had to be creative. We had to find a way to bring people in and find us, because we were literally at the end of Boyle Heights, not the nicest corner of the street, and then we were inside of a mini mall complex, so just super hard to find.
Right. Okay. So. I'm really curious because sometimes anonymity and being hidden gives you an opportunity to really focus in. You're not getting bombarded with as much business as you'd really like, but the time and the space gives you the opportunity to refine a little bit your roasting, your service. Did you find that to be true for what you did in a small space, even at that early time in your history?
For sure. I remember the first couple months that we opened, it was like friends and family that knew we were there. But I remember $25 days.
$25?
25. That was or $25 or $50 day.
Ooh.
So that's
rough.
Yeah. For the most part, we were still scraping by a couple $100 a day in the early months of opening there, but it was very low cost to run. The rent was very, very low, so that helped us stay afloat. We didn't have to pay utilities, so it was just really, there was a lot of time to focus on marketing and trying to how do we get people into the shop? How do we took samples everywhere. We passed out flyers. Okay. We passed out flyers to the community, and that really helped bring people in.
Did that work?
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't think it was going to work, but he was no, we should print flyers and put a coupon on there, buy a coffee, you get the second one free.
Yes.
And then we had a ton of schools and other businesses within walking distance. So we literally took our iced cafe de olla latte and we dropped off samples to the attendance office. And
Brilliant.
The next day, all the teachers came in, and it literally was going door to door. That's
You're
how
interrupting people's patterns, right?
Yeah. It was either that or just sit around waiting for people to hopefully locate us. And at that point, it was we didn't have much of a following.
Were these people going to coffee shops already, or was it more were you taking them away from their usual coffee shop now to discover yours mostly?
They were going to Starbucks. We had a Starbucks right across the street from us, a drive-through Starbucks.
But not a local place.
I mean, not within walking distance, no.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can feel good about that.
I mean,
yeah.
it was good. It was nice that
great.
they came in and it was just like, all they had to do was try the coffee and then hopefully they would like it and then come.
Yeah, so the people are discovering you. You're going out there to get them the samples. Were you roasting coffee at that time?
Yes, we were already roasting our own coffee. In the beginning, it was just like very few selections. We didn't have anything interesting. Our volume was very low. At the same time, we were trying to do wholesale as well.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't recommend it to people. If you're just starting, if you don't have the money, don't do it because it's wholesale is another game and it's rough.
It requires more investment than just roasting for your own cafe. What is it that it requires more investment for?
Well, it's not necessarily that it requires more money, but it takes longer for you to see that money coming back.
Okay.
People often want like net 30, net 14, stuff like that. So you had to wait until that money comes in, and then you still have bills to pay, plus the bills of the cafe that are continuing to go. They're continuing to come to you. So it's hard. I think it's smarter to focus on one thing first and then the other one.
Yeah.
And just grow it. I know, like once one is steady, then you can focus on the other one. But we were trying to be a little too ambitious, and we were just trying to figure it out.
When you look at the approach you took with the cafe and with roasting, and you say, well, this was created for the community that we are in, what does that mean to you? What did you do to make it an intentionally hospitable space for Boyle Heights?
A lot has to do with just hospitality, just being like nice to people, try to be, like make them feel welcome. And also have items that they can connect with, that they understand and they're going to like. For instance, we have our Café Doya Latte, which is, it's a syrup that is just like it's a recipe that everyone knows. It's cinnamon, anise, orange peel, and brown sugar in our case, but most of the time it's piloncillo. Yeah. And you mix it with coffee and you brew it, and that's it. But we will make it as a syrup and then add it to lattes or to drip, to matcha, to anything. Then Elisa also came out with other drinks as well, other signature drinks that we had. And one of them was we still have it right now. It's called El Pino Latte. It represents Boyle Heights. In Boyle Heights, we have a big pine tree that is kind of famous. And that was the whole reason why we wanted to have that drink.
You have a famous pine tree.
Yes.
I did not know this. I didn't see a famous pine tree when I was at your new cafe, the newly opened cafe here.
It's not right in there, but I don't know if you ever seen the movie Blood In, Blood Out.
I'm going to have to now.
Okay.
Because I need to see this pine tree. Yeah. So these signature beverages are like connecting culturally familiar things with the neighborhood. So they feel like this is a place that gets us. Right, because this is part of the problem that coffee shops have sometimes is like that it's a Starbucks and that's pretty sanitized coffee. It's not really deeply rooted in something.
For sure, especially a big corporation like Starbucks. El Pino was, we wanted something specific to our community, something that like would resonate with our customers.
Yeah.
And we actually, at the time that we came up with the drink, we lived on the same street that El Pino is located on.
Yeah.
So it was just kind of like we have to make a blend, like a piney flavored blend. So it's a rosemary, chamomile, cinnamon, and brown sugar latte. It's my favorite.
I love the idea of rosemary in there too. People don't realize just how many kind of like herby things you can put into coffee. And it's like all these concoctions, vanilla, caramel, and all this other stuff. But there's some really cool stuff that goes well.
Yes.
Okay.
So that one's good.
So then now you have a new space, though. It's much bigger.
Yes.
And did you have food in the first space?
Yeah, we had a pretty good menu, right? We started out with like 4 or 5 burritos, breakfast burritos, and a chile relleno burrito. We had some wraps. We had a breakfast sandwich. We had a waffle Sammy, and then pastries.
Now, when you say breakfast burritos, a lot of people, what they think is, I ordered these from Cisco, and I reheated them. You ever have one of those like Cisco reheated burritos from a coffee shop? They're pretty nasty, honestly.
Oh, okay.
The burritos you're talking about, they're awesome. Like,
they were really
handmade.
good. Handmade.
Yeah.
But we would order those wholesale from another cafe, friends of ours that had a bakery shop with a kitchen. And so they would deliver the burritos and we would just preheat them in the convection oven.
Yeah.
And
Very cool.
So people liked them. They were decent, right?
So
nothing compared to what we have right now.
No.
And that's where I'm getting to is like now you've got a large kitchen facility that puts out a lot more food. And you also put out a lot more coffee. So you have a bigger space. And I got to be there with a few other people that you were having a breakfast event. And it was just a fantastic space. Very welcoming. It was like there's architecture on the inside. There's like a wall with an archway between the bars that I love. So talk to us a little bit about how you decided to scale to that location and what the design choices were that you made that kind of enhanced what you were already doing.
Well, so that's where our partner here, Francisco, comes into the picture, him and his wife, Maribel, who we got to know through our first location. They were customers and then became friends. And we had been kind of throwing around this idea of collaborating in some way. He expressed interest in wanting to invest in a cafe. We had been talking about it for a year or two. About a year.
Nice.
And then when this opportunity came up for this location, then it was like, okay, well, let's seriously talk about this. It was a Marisco restaurant before, so it came fully equipped with a renovated kitchen.
Nice.
Like the arch, everything you see was already there. The only thing we added was the espresso bar. Like we actually built that.
Yeah, through the arch. So then you got
that was it. We were like, how are we going to make this work? Like, yeah, that was tricky. But we could not have done it without Frank's help here. Challenging, a lot of challenges, different space.
But you had a reputation at this point. You're making a lot of like inroads into the community. It's the community that you're a part of. Like that's your area. And so it's like when you expand, now people are just going to keep supporting that business because it's of the neighborhood. It's of the community, right?
I think so.
We were trying to evolve ourselves a lot with the community in the beginning. We will do a lot of community events, pop-ups. We will host people in our small little place that we had. And when we moved into the new location, all these people were happy about what was going on, that helped us create more traction.
Yeah.
And, it was just like a snowball effect. Like people were sharing that we were moving into a bigger location, and we opened our doors it was the last week of December in between Christmas and New Year's, and it was supposed to be like a soft opening because we wanted to check out, we never had a kitchen, so we didn't know how we were gonna work, and also we were like super understaffed. We didn't know if we were gonna have enough.
One person in the kitchen. Wow.
And it was only like 3 baristas that we had, and plus us. We didn't have any more money. We used all the money that we had to build the bar and pay all the plumbing, pay all the fees, everything involved with opening a new location. So we were already at zero, but we had to open. And the moment that we opened, it was insane. There was a line. And I think at that point, we didn't even have espresso machine set. We were serving from the outside because we were still trying to connect our espresso machine inside on day one.
People want it.
And people want it, so.
That's awesome.
And we just figured it out, and after that is it. Until this point, it's still like trial and error. We're trying to figure out what works, what doesn't work, and trying to improve everything for our team and for our community too, so that they can have the service that they deserve.
Yes.
So it's been fun.
I feel like it's so simple when you say just be nice, be friendly, be kind. To me, it feels like there's this. When you enter into a coffee shop, sometimes there's a force that's almost pushing you away from the coffee shop. Like you've got to dance the dance, you've got to know the terms, and the baristas are often the culprits, in the way we set up our menus and things. And so by welcoming people, don't be yourself. You enjoy not just a homogenous like age group or type of person, it's just everybody there. Like when I first came into the cafe, there was an older lady that was like, you were serving her at the counter, and then there was a bunch of like young hotshot coffee people coming in as well, and everyone's treated exactly the same.
Yeah,
it's great.
That's something that is very important for us, and it's funny because earlier I was talking to someone else, and I was explaining to this person that we have technology now that is helping us make better coffee. That is getting easier and easier as we move on, right? But the thing that it will never change is hospitality. That is just like, you have to be kind, you have to be human to serve these people.
Yeah.
And there's not going to be anything in technology it's going to make this easier if we don't want to.
Right.
With coffee, it's just going to get easier and easier to make better coffee every year. but how we treat people, it really depends on us and our willingness to be kind to other people, and to understand that, they're supporting our business and therefore they're supporting you too. And, we're baristas, so we rely on tips. That's another way to make an extra dollar per transaction if you want, and it makes a big difference.
Well said. Yeah, indeed. So let me ask this, because I think it's something I see in the industry, and this, as we wrap up here, I feel like every time I go to a coffee fest or a city, there's always like the really large chains you can go to. There's the very, sometimes the most convenient thing is the place that can afford to have their cafe in the most convenient places. But what you're saying, Leo, about the hospitality, it's a very soul-satisfying thing to receive that. And you tend to see a lot of small shops opening that are very much rooted culturally. So for you all with Boyle Heights, it's reflecting the Hispanic community, and then other people, it's just wherever they happen to be, but they're doing something more deeper than just the transaction. So if there are people out there listening to this that are saying, that's kind of what I want to do, I just don't want to be a coffee slinger. I want to be somebody who brings that kind of thing to my community. What would you advise them based on your experience?
Just be kind, just be you. I mean, it's so simple to be nice to people. You just gotta say thank you to people when they go to your cafe. You just gotta try to learn what they order every day. We gotta understand too that coffee it's a matter of convenience. People are gonna go to the coffee shop that is closer to them for the most part. Yeah, there's gonna be people that are gonna be looking for like the best coffee in the city, but that's a very small percentage. And in the end of the day, people are looking for something that it's either close by to where they work or close by to home, and they're treated with respect, and the quality stays high.
Yeah.
And no, that's also important. You gotta make sure that everything that you do is to the best of your capabilities. That's an open conversation. It can be so different for everyone, right? But people will see when you're trying your best, and that's all that matters. People appreciate that.
I love it.
If you have a team, you have to communicate to the team what he just said, and that is important because not everyone's going to come in with the same hospitality background or ease of speaking to people, or especially, customers that are not nice or can be rude or they're a little harder to charm.
Yes.
That happens every day. So I think you have to really just be open and honest with your team. Let them know, hey, this is a value of ours that is really important to us, and just always be reiterating that hospitality and how we treat people.
I like that you mentioned that, because it is a group effort. You've got a lot of people working for you, and they have to be on the same wavelength so that the customer doesn't say, oh, well, I want Elisa or I want Leo to serve me. No, we need everybody to embody those values, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Well, you're well on your way. It was great. And here's the thing. Every single person here at Coffee Fest has the initial idea and dream to open and do the thing the way that it's supposed to be done. And then you start doing it and you have to pick up the pieces, because everything kind of falls apart a little bit, and then you have to put it back together again, and then you have to let it fall apart a little bit, and then you keep building it from there. And the fact that people are just knocking down your door to get your food, get your coffee and everything else is so encouraging, because they feel it. And I know it's difficult sometimes, and entrepreneurs listening to this will be like, yeah, it doesn't always feel like we're winning.
No.
But, it's part of the journey, and I think that I'm just really privileged to have gone to your cafe, and you all do such a great job. So where can we learn more about Picaresca and buy your coffee and go to your cafe?
You can find us on Instagram, picaresca.cafe. Also, you can visit our website, barrapicaresca.com. So that's BARRAPISC. Picaresca.
No, we'll have it in the show notes, everybody. Okay.
Could have just read Frank's hat and it wouldn't be easier. But yeah, follow us on our social media. We're always checking. It's either me or Elisa we answer all the messages We have our website too, where you can buy coffee and also our famous Café Doya syrup too. So, and you can subscribe to those options as well, and just get it delivered once a month.
Awesome.
Without thinking about it.
Well, thank you guys so much for sitting down with me.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you so much for having us.
Okay, everybody. Well, I really hope that you were inspired by that. These folks are so down to earth, and because I know them, I would consider them friends, honestly. And I would say I love seeing folks like this in the industry, and their success is such a joy to see. If you are interested in learning more about Picaresca, then you need to go to their website, barrapicaresca.com, BARRA, picaresca.com. You can find that in the show notes as well. Go to their Instagram account, which is at picaresca.cafe, and follow them out there. And you should do yourself a favor too and order their coffee. Taste their coffee. You can buy that online and in the stores. So if you're in the Los Angeles area, definitely get out to Boyle Heights and experience amazing food, amazing coffee, and hospitality at Picaresca. Thank you both, Leo and Elisa, for being on the show. It was awesome. Now, that's going to round out part one for our episode of live interviews from Coffee Fest in Los Angeles 2024. If this intrigues you and you're saying, wow, these are just two conversations on the show floor. Think about how many hundreds or more conversations have happened in past Coffee Fest trade shows. You could be a part of that if you go to Coffee Fest. So again, check them out at coffeefest.com and stay tuned for part two, where we're going to be talking with Ana Gutierrez of Barista 22, a longtime educator and coffee professional, actually one of our educational pillars in specialty coffee. And then we're going to be talking with a past guest who was on a Rate of Rise episode. We're going to sit down with Sandra Elisa Loofborough, who is a consultant, and her company is called Loop Coffee Consulting. That's Loupe. And with Ana, we're going to talk about basics of barista training then and now, what's different today than it was in the past, and what are the main things that need to be taught to baristas when they first start out. And then with Sandra, we're going to be talking about tasting, mainly how to develop your tasting vocabulary in your roastery, in your coffee shop, so you can communicate effectively about your coffee. So don't miss part two. Tune in, and we will see you on that episode. And as always, I hope that this episode has truly given you keys to the shop.